Hi, everyone, and thank you all for coming to our program today. We know that this term is really stressful and for a lot of different reasons, and we really appreciate you giving some of your free time to come and talk to us about present control, which we're really excited to talk about. So present control is a way to positively reframe the stressors in our life, and it's a practice that allows us to more effectively manage our stress. Our present control program is based on research by Dr. Patricia Frazier from the University of Minnesota. She's been researching and developing the very same principles that we're going to talk to you about for over 10 years. So we're going to start with a quick disclaimer, and we'll go into more detail in just a minute, but we wanted to start by acknowledging that there are many different levels of stress, which range from everyday stressors to trauma. For this presentation, our examples will focus primarily on everyday stressors. However, present control has been shown to benefit those who have experienced trauma or are experiencing chronic illness. What present control addresses in trauma-related stressors are not the stressors of the trauma itself, but how we frame those experiences. This is an important distinction because some trauma may be beyond the scope of this program, but professional staff at SHAC are equipped to support people in this area. Feel free to come chat with us after the program if you want help finding any of these resources. So this is just to say that we're inviting you to think about your more significant stressors, but we wanted to let you know that the examples we'll be giving today will only cover everyday stressors. So going off of that, we'd like to start by having everybody think of something stressful that is ongoing in your life right now and write it down. Maybe it's an exam that's coming up or a fight you just had with a friend or any of the stressors related to a remote spring term. Take a brief moment to draw this event to mind and write it down if writing down is something that is helpful to you. So the reason we start off with this is to acknowledge that wherever we are, we all experience stress and that stress is normal. Stress isn't something that we should try to avoid or be ashamed of. It's just a part of life. Instead of avoiding stress, we need to learn how to manage it in a healthy and active way. That's what we're going to begin learning how to do today with present control. So now that we understand that stress is a natural part of life, it's time to answer the question, what exactly is present control? As we can see on the slide, we define present control as the focusing of one's energy on what can be controlled in what may seem like an uncontrollable situation. This is especially focused on our present thoughts and behaviors, rather than dwelling on the past or thinking about avoiding situations in the future. As the name suggests, present control is about living in the present moment and acting on the parts of a situation that we do have control over. This is really hard at first, but just like any new skill, it gets easier with practice. We'll teach you how to practice present control after we unpack different kinds of stressors. Some stressors come from the day-to-day, the need to juggle all of our responsibilities, from academics to work to social life and to managing your relationships. Most students experience this kind of stress regularly. Other stressors can come out of specific experiences, like an upcoming exam or a fight with a loved one. This is a less general kind of stress and usually has a specific starting point. There are also stressors that are traumas, things like the death of a family member or a close friend, witnessing physical violence or sexual violence. As we said before, present control can help in dealing with the symptoms of trauma, but it should be used alongside professional support. Although these kinds of stressors may seem more distant, Frazier reports that 84% of her students reported an experience with trauma. These categories of stressors are not rigid and can feed into one another. Left unchecked, stressors can have effects on our emotions, our academic performance, physical health, and relationships. Some examples we've seen from Frazier's study include feeling jittery or always on edge, feeling like you can't deal with anything anymore, taking out one's issues on others, pulling away from relationships, lacking commitments, procrastination, and physical symptoms. So clearly this kind of stress is something we want to get rid of, and it's not helpful. But sometimes stressful situations can feel overwhelming, and we want to figure out what we can do about these situations. In order to get to Frazier's method of present control, we'll start off with the general aspect of control. It seems pretty straightforward that stressors that are controllable are easier to deal with, and stressors that are uncontrollable are harder to deal with. But what Fraser posits is that the perception of control is as crucial a part of how we respond to a stressful situation where we may not have complete control. For example, one student may think that their stress is uncontrollable because their final exam is dependent on their professor and what their professor chooses to place on the exam, clearly something that's outside of a student's control. However, another student in that same class may believe that their stress is controllable because their success on the exam depends on how much work they put into studying. In this way, the same event may be perceived as controllable or uncontrollable and may have different outcomes. Perceptions can shape the way we feel and think about stress. All of this leads us to the idea of present control and how this is different from past or future control. Imagine, for example, that you just realized that you lost your phone. This is a stressful situation and you need to think about what to do next. One reaction may be to dwell on the fact that your phone is gone and to continually think about what you could have done to prevent this loss. This is a natural first reaction, and it's okay up to a point. However, dwelling on the past is no longer helpful and can actually be detrimental to remedying the situation. What has happened, and because the event is in the past, there is nothing we can do to change that it happened. The past is uncontrollable, and thinking about what could have been done differently will not change that fact. Another reaction is to worry about the future and to try and prevent something like this from ever happening again. While this may seem productive, we actually have very little control over what might happen in the future. It's true that we have more control here than we do over the past, but the way we are able to prevent mistakes from happening again is not to worry about them as hypotheticals, but by taking actions in the present. And that leads us to the idea of present control. In this case, that would be focusing on what you do have control over right now. That almost always includes how you think about a situation and how you respond to your initial feelings. Of course, our initial reaction to a situation is not always under our control, but the actions we take based on that initial reaction are. So in this example of losing your phone, that might involve you putting your phone in a safe spot in your backpack or always making sure it's charged before going out. These are concrete steps that you can take to control your present actions and your stress. So present control isn't to say that you can't feel regret or try to think ahead, but it demonstrates that refocusing your energy into controlling what is within the present and within your control is more productive than dwelling or worrying about hypotheticals. And all of that can lead us to a less stressful state. It is unhelpful to focus on or ruminate on things we can't control. And people who focus on what they do have control over, things in the present, report less stress, depression, anxiety, and health issues. So here are some general examples of what is and isn't controllable based on what students reported to Fraser. So some things that are not controllable include a lot of things that have to do with others. So what others do, think, or feel. Also things that happened in the past that already have occurred and we don't have control over. What your professor puts on the test or somebody else becoming sick. Things that are controllable include choices that you make to prioritize socializing with your friends, the choice to prioritize sleep so that you can feel the best that you can, to choose to not watch TV or go on social media until you finish an important task, to control what you say or to control how much you dwell on thinking about a situation that has happened, or to control what you do with your feelings, since you can't always control your immediate feelings. So now we're going to go through a quick activity using the stressful event you thought of at the beginning of this webinar. Present control can be broken down into 3 steps, and I'll give you a few moments to write or type out your answers to each step as we go along. So bring your stressful event to mind. You can bring a new one to mind if you want, and think about what aspects of this stressor specifically are causing you stress. Remember that present control doesn't work on your stress in general, but it works a lot better on specific stressors. For example, you just lost your phone. So take a few seconds to bring that to mind. All right, the next step is to break it down. So you're going to break down your stressor into what you can and cannot control. And you want to start writing these out into 2 lists and be intentional that you're focusing on what you can control a lot more than what you can't. Even if it seems like the stressor is out of your control, remember that you can always control your thoughts and your responses. And it's okay to acknowledge what you can't control here, but don't dwell on it. The last step is to make a plan. So you want to come up with actionable steps for what you can control. These steps can be as simple or as complex as you want. Writing these steps down can help you with your follow through, as can telling a friend about your plan. So, to sum it up, present control is about focusing on your life as it is right now. What has happened, happened, and what will happen is unpredictable. Present control gives us a way to control current aspects or symptoms of the stressful event and has been shown to decrease the effect that stressors have on us. We get that this is easier said than done, and it is especially difficult to learn how to cope with stressors that are outside of our control. However, in every stressful situation, there is always something that you can control, even if it's just your thoughts and reactions. Using these 3 steps can help you learn how to identify what is in your control and to let go of what is outside of your control. This is hard at first, but like any other skill, it'll become easier. So thank you all for listening about present control for a little bit. In the original version of this program, this is the part where we handed out stress journals so that you could decorate them and use them to practice your present control by keeping kind of a stress log. And our virtual Nook activity this week is about making your own DIY journals. So if you are interested in learning how to do that, you can visit this link right here. And we will also link to our virtual Nook when we post this video. So I'll stick around now for some questions. If anybody has them, you can type them out or you can unmute yourself. But otherwise, thank you all for tuning in.